It started raining around 8 p.m., right as I hit the halfway mark on a long, lonely drive through the countryside. The kind of rain that doesn't ease in, it just crashes down all at once, hammering the windshield so hard it felt like the glass might crack. My wipers squealed and dragged across the glass, but they could barely keep up. I hadn't planned to be on the road that late, but work had run longer than expected, and I didn't want to spend another night in that motel. So I figured I'd push through, maybe stop somewhere for coffee on the way. But as the sky darkened and the rain thickened, the road ahead started to blur. My GPS lost signal miles back. No towns, no gas stations, just endless, slick asphalt and the rhythmic drum of rain on metal. My headlights reflected off the curtain of water, and fog crept along the edges of the road. That's when I saw it. A flicker of yellow light in the distance, a neon glow that broke through the rain like a beacon. I slowed down, squinting. It looked like an old diner, one of those late-night stops with a parking lot full of potholes and a buzzing sign half lit by fluorescent tubes. I pulled in. The gravel crunched under my tires. The sign above the awning flickered, Miller's Diner. The R in Miller's was dead, blinking weakly between darkness and light. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment, listening to the rain hammer the roof. The place looked empty, but the lights inside were on, warm and yellow. I thought maybe I could wait out the storm there, grab a cup of coffee, maybe pie if I was lucky. When I stepped out, the cold hit me like a slap. My jacket soaked through instantly. I jogged up to the door, shaking off water, and pulled it open. A bell jingled somewhere overhead. Inside, the diner was warm, quiet, and smelled faintly of old grease and coffee. Booths lined the windows, red vinyl cracked in places, and a long counter ran across the far wall with stools that probably hadn't been reupholstered in decades. There were people inside, or at least I thought there were. A man sat in a booth near the window, a paper open in front of him. Across the room, a woman in a waitress uniform leaned against the counter, her back to me. A couple sat in another booth, staring at each other, motionless. The only sound was the rain against the windows and the soft hum of the overhead lights. I stepped inside, letting the door close behind me. "Evenin'," I said, my voice louder than I expected. The waitress turned slowly. She smiled, sort of. It was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Evenin', hon. Rough weather out there, huh?" Her voice was flat, almost like she'd practiced the line 1,000 times. "Yeah," I said, rubbing my arms. "Came out of nowhere. Sit wherever you like." I picked a booth near the window opposite the man with the newspaper. He didn't look up. Didn't even move. The waitress grabbed a menu and walked over. Her shoes made almost no sound on the linoleum. She slid the menu across the table. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." She nodded once, turned and walked away. I glanced around while she poured it. The place had an old charm, sure, but something about it felt still. Too still. Like a snapshot instead of a scene. The couple across the room hadn't spoken. The man's hand was on the table, palm up. The woman's was resting just above it, but not touching. The man with the newspaper hadn't flipped a page since I came in. And the clock on the wall above the counter wasn't ticking. I checked my phone for service. Nothing. The time on the screen read 8:46 p.m. When the waitress returned, she set the cup down gently. "That'll warm you up." "Thanks," I said. I took a sip. It was hot and bitter, but it hit the spot. "You guys open all night?" Her expression didn't change. "Always open, hon." Her lipstick was too bright, the kind that belonged in a different decade. I noticed, faintly, that her hands were shaking. "You okay?" I asked. Her eyes flicked up, then quickly away. "You're not from around here, are you?" "No. Just passing through." Something about the way she asked it made me uneasy. I forced a small laugh. "How'd you guess?" She didn't answer. She walked back behind the counter where she stood again, hands folded, staring at nothing. The rain grew louder, rattling against the glass. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the man's newspaper for a split second. The page was yellowed, the edges torn. Something made me lean a little closer. The date on the paper, March 18, 1982. I frowned. Maybe he liked old papers. Maybe it was decoration. But I looked again at the couple. The man's shirt, the woman's hairstyle, both distinctly retro. I tried to shake it off. Just old-fashioned folks, maybe. Old diner, old habits. I looked at my coffee cup and noticed something strange. The steam had stopped rising. It was hot a minute ago, but now it looked cold. I touched the side of the cup. Room temperature. And the waitress hadn't moved. No one had. It hit me so suddenly I froze. The man with the paper hadn't turned a page. The couple hadn't shifted. Even the clock hands hadn't budged. Everything was frozen. Except me. And then, very softly, I heard the bell above the door jingle. Someone else had come in. I turned my head slowly, expecting to see another traveler, someone escaping the storm. But no one was there. The door was shut tight. Another jingle. But the door didn't move. It sounded again, faintly this time, like the sound was coming from somewhere else. From inside the diner. "Hello?" I called. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the hum of the fluorescent lights. No response. Then I saw it, barely, in the reflection of the window. A shape moving behind me just past the counter. Slow, steady steps. I turned around fast. The waitress was gone. The counter was empty, the coffee pot half full, still steaming faintly. The bell jingled again, this time directly above me. I looked up. The string that held the bell was swaying. As if someone had just walked past. My heart pounded. I stood scanning the diner. Everything was still. Everyone was frozen. Then, from the booth behind me I heard it. A whisper. It was soft, like breath sliding through teeth. "You shouldn't be here." I whipped around. The man with the newspaper was looking at me. His eyes, pale, watery, were fixed on mine. The paper trembled in his hands. His mouth moved again. "They don't like visitors." My stomach dropped. "Who doesn't?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. His hands began to shake violently, the paper rattling like dry leaves. And then, one by one, the other patrons began to move. The couple turned their heads toward me in unison, eyes dark and hollow. The woman's lips stretched into a smile that cracked her face too wide. The man's mouth opened soundlessly as if gasping for air. The lights above flickered. And the waitress's voice came from behind the counter, low and trembling. "You need to go. Before they wake up." The bell over the door jangled again, violently this time. I ran for it. The moment my hand touched the door handle, everything went black. No lights. No rain. Just silence. And in that silence, something whispered right beside my ear, close enough that I felt the cold breath on my neck. "You're already too late." When the lights went out, I thought for a second I'd gone blind. The silence was total. No thunder, no wind, not even the ticking of that broken clock. Just my pulse pounding in my ears. I stood frozen by the door, fingers still gripping the handle. I tried to pull it open, but it wouldn't budge. It felt locked from the outside. I yanked harder, both hands now slick with sweat and rainwater. Nothing. Then, faintly, I began to hear it again. The rain. But it didn't sound like it was coming from outside anymore. It was inside the diner, dripping somewhere in the dark, steady and hollow. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen flared to life, only for an instant. Battery, 9%. No service. But the light illuminated just enough to see that I was no longer alone near the door. A shape stood a few feet away, still human-sized. "Hello?" My voice cracked. The shape didn't move. I stepped back, raised my phone higher. The light caught its face. It was the waitress. Only, she didn't look the same. Her skin had turned grayish, soaked through. Her hair hung flat and wet, dripping onto the floor. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder, revealing skin that looked bloated, like she'd been underwater. "Please," she said, voice barely audible. "You have to go back." I'm trying," I stammered. "The door won't open." She shook her head slowly, eyes darting to the booths behind me. "You shouldn't have come in. What is this place?" Her lips quivered. "A memory." Before I could ask what she meant, a noise cut through the darkness. The sound of chairs dragging, vinyl creaking. The other diners were standing up. My flashlight wobbled across them. Their faces were pale and dripping too, eyes dark and empty. They looked soaked, like they'd all been pulled out of the same black water. The man with the newspaper was nearest. He stepped toward me, leaving wet footprints behind. "We tried to leave," he whispered. "The storm wouldn't let us." "What are you talking about?" He stopped just short of me. His face twitched like he was fighting to keep control of it. "We've been here since the night it flooded. The river came down on the road, took us all." I felt my stomach turn. "That was decades ago." "March 18th, he rasped. 1982. The number on the paper. The waitress moved closer, trembling. "Every storm brings someone new. Every one of them thinks they can stop here, wait it out." "Then why are you here?" I asked. Her voice broke. "Because I stayed to help them." A crash echoed from the kitchen. Pots clattered, metal scraping tile. The others began to whisper all at once, their voices blending into a low drone that filled the diner like static. I stumbled backward toward the counter. My light shook violently across the walls. The pictures that hung there, black and white snapshots of smiling patrons, were running. The ink was melting, streaking downward like tears. Something heavy moved in the kitchen again. A door slammed. Then the whisper stopped. The silence was worse. The waitress turned sharply toward the counter. "They're waking." "Who's waking?" I shouted. She didn't answer. She backed away from the kitchen door, eyes wide with terror. "You have to listen to me. When the bell rings, run. Don't look back. Don't talk to them." "The bell?" She opened her mouth to explain, but her face suddenly jerked sideways, yanked by something unseen. She screamed once before being pulled back into the darkness of the kitchen. Her scream cut off halfway. My phone light flickered. And then I heard footsteps, heavy, dragging footsteps, from the kitchen doorway. I aimed the light at it, and for the brief second before it died completely, I saw what was coming through. It looked human, but the body was wrong, bent, bloated, covered in silt and shredded fabric. The skin had split along the arms like waterlogged bark. Its eyes shone faintly, milky white, and its mouth was moving as if whispering underwater. It stepped into the dining area, leaving a trail of black water that steamed on the tile. Another shape followed it. Then another. The drowned. I grabbed at the door again, pulling, hitting, praying for it to move. The handle felt cold, metal that burned against my palm. Behind me I heard the bell. It jingled once, softly. I didn't wait. I shoved the door with all my strength. It flew open like it had never been locked at all. Rain and wind hit me full in the face, cold and alive. I ran into the storm, barely seeing the road, headlights from my car glowing faintly through the downpour. I jumped in, slammed the lock, turned the key, nothing. The car was dead. The bell jingled again from outside the diner. I looked back through the windshield. The diner glowed dimly behind the sheets of rain. In one of the windows I saw movement, the waitress standing perfectly still, staring out. Her hand was pressed to the glass. Her mouth moved slowly. "Go." I didn't hesitate. I jumped out and started running down the road. The rain was so thick it blurred the world into noise and shadow. Every few seconds I glanced back, and each time the diner looked farther away, darker, until it vanished completely. I don't remember how long I ran. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. But eventually I saw lights ahead, headlights, real ones, cutting through the rain. I waved my arms, shouting until my throat burned. The car slowed, then stopped beside me. A man rolled down his window. "Jesus, buddy, you okay? You're soaked." "Please," I gasped. "My car died, back there at Miller's Diner." He frowned. "Miller's?" "Yeah. Just up the road." He shook his head slowly. "Son, there's nothing up that road but forest. That diner burned down years ago. Flood took the whole place in '82. My stomach twisted. "No. I was just there." He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "Hop in. I'll take you to town." I climbed in, shivering. The heater hummed. The windshield wipers fought the storm. We rode in silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. "You sure you're okay?" "Yeah," I muttered. "Just cold." He nodded, eyes fixed on the road. "Funny thing," he said after a pause, "I picked up a woman like you a few years back. Same storm. Said she came from that diner too." I turned my head slowly toward him. "What happened to her?" He smiled faintly, eyes glinting in the dash light. "Never made it to town. Disappeared before morning." Lightning flashed outside, and for an instant the light illuminated the passenger side window. Through the rain-streaked glass, I saw the reflection of the diner sign behind us. Miller's Diner. Every letter glowing bright. The R wasn't flickering anymore. And over the hum of the car, so faint I could barely hear it, came the sound of a bell jingling, soft, distant, and somehow inside the car. The driver turned slowly toward me. "You didn't leave?" he whispered. The car filled with the sound of rain again, pounding, endless and cold. And when I looked out the window one last time, the road was gone. Only the neon lights of Miller's Diner reflected on the water that stretched forever. And that is tonight's story. Whether you believe it or not, some roads are better left untraveled and some doors should never be opened. If you were stranded in the middle of a storm and saw an old diner with its lights on, would you go inside or keep driving? If this story gave you chills tonight, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next nightmare. Your support keeps the darkness alive on this channel. Dew of Dread.